We are, or rather I am, rapidly approaching the point where I'll have made a video about every transforming figure I currently own. A toy nerd event horizon, if you will. And so, most of the videos going forward, until I finally catch up entirely at least, are going to cover the figures I've been intentionally putting off. Not because they're bad, but because I know scripting, filming, and editing a video about them is going to be complicated and tedious. Hence, this thing. An oversized knockoff of Unique Toys Desperado, which is a third-party take on Dark of the Moon Megatron, that I think this is from Notable KO Heavyweight's Black Mamba. Maybe. It's what it says in the listing, but I've also seen things where it doesn't mention Black Mamba, so I don't know. And now, yes, the reason this guy is part of the because no one else is left, so I have to list, is because the transformation is complex. But what's funny is I actually have two unvideoed Megatrons right now, and between this and RID 2005 Megs, or I guess Gigatron, I decided this would be easier. I am not kidding. We're starting in robot mode this time because this version of the figure is still relatively new, and this is how he comes packaged. I think this is also how the Unique Toys version comes packaged. So I thought it might be helpful if folks could see how to get him into truck mode instead of the other way around. But before we get to that, let's talk about this guy's appearance. It's pretty good! Absolutely, the weathering on this thing is a bit lacking, and it's way more lacking if you compare it to the desert version of the Unique Toys original, which I did own at one point. But taken on its own merits, separate from the original release with better paint and almost double the price tag, this looks pretty decent. I may eventually try my hand at some custom weathering in the future, but for now, this'll do, Megs. This'll do. To be honest, there are even aspects of this look that I prefer over the original. The light tan plastic and slightly larger size allow the molded details to come through more effectively, and I like how you can see some shiny silver poking out in areas like the toes, knees, hips, shoulders, chest, elbows. Also, and this is not exclusive to this version, but I like how the wires on the forearms, both forearms, are painted separately, so you can see those details really clearly. It really makes them pop. Molding-wise, I believe most of what's here is the same as the original figure, except for the chest and head. Or this head. He comes with two heads. One is just an oversized version of the original Unique Toys sculpt. But this is a new one done for this version. And to be honest, I think I like the new chest and head sculpting better. There's just a little more detailing in his center mass, and the proportions of the new head kind of feel better to me. Don't know if it's any more or less accurate to the screen, I just prefer it. We also need to take a moment to appreciate how clean, relatively speaking, for a Bayverse design, this robot mode actually is. All credit belongs with Unique Toys, of course, but look at this. I feel like if someone didn't know, they might not be able to tell it actually transforms. This is so cool. Aside from that other head, this is everything the figure comes with. He gets a cloak that's passable, a much better chain than what Unique Toys shipped their figure with, a giant robot shotgun, and a holster for said giant robot shotgun. The gun is sculpted and painted nicely, looks suitably nasty, and can actually go in either hand thanks to tabs on the side of the grip for the more hand-like claw and a plug peg thing on the back for the claw-like claw. My issue with this is the fault of the original design used in the movie. Not Unique Toys or Black Mamba, but I am just not a fan of the weedy little claw. It looks okay-ish if you plug the shotgun into it in a very specific way, with this one really long finger along the top, but otherwise it's pretty meh. The cloak thing is basically just a scrap of brown fabric with some holes cut into it and a bit of Velcro you can use to shape it like a hood, and this is fine. And with enough folding, it can look decent enough. But it would have been cool to get something a little more intentionally worn, maybe with some tattered edges that isn't falling apart as much, and maybe even has like a wire sewn in so you can do like more dynamic poses with it. Then again, this is a KO, so it's not like I was actually expecting something like that. It just would have been nice is all. Truthfully though, I do kind of love how, if you're not meticulous about scaling, the biggest improvement this knockoff has over the original figure is the chain accessory. This is so much better than the other version, it's almost hilarious. If I remember correctly, the Unique Toys version came with two chains, but they were too short to set up easily, and most of the time they wouldn't quite reach the spots you wanted them to anyway. Here, we get an almost unnecessarily lengthy chain, which is a good thing, that gives you plenty of freedom in deciding how to set it up. You can wrap, like, this is one chain that's wrapped around this torso multiple times. And because of the tiny holes that are cut into the cloth, you can also have it weaving through the cloak and around his torso, which I think looks awesome. Like I said before, I'm a bigger fan of this new head, so that's where we're going to be focusing on for this segment. The sculpt and detailing on this are pretty darn nice. It's basically the same head he's had for the previous Bayverse films, only now with a big wound on the side showing off some exposed inner workings, and you can see some painted wires poking through in a couple of places too, especially right up in here. This completely throws off the symmetry, but that's the point. It really conveys the idea that this is the same Megatron from the first couple of movies after capital G, capital T going through it. Also, the mouth can open a bit, and there are lights inside. There's like a little button on the back of the head, but I don't have the right kind of batteries to show off the glowing. Sorry. Oh boy, now we get to show off articulation. It's just, because this thing is so large and cumbersome, that's the sticking point. Now, head articulation is actually quite nice. The head, I'm actually going to have to disrobe him for a second. The head is on this kind of like, it's like a ball socket that goes down, or a ball joint that goes down into the torso, but then there's also this double joint for down here and up here in the head. So that means you can kind of lift the head up, angle it forward, you can rotate, but you can also get some slight tilt. So you can look up and down and rotate. Like, it's a little bit hard to work with in some instances, but it's not bad. You get a pretty decent amount of range on this. For the shoulders, they can go all the way around, though depending on certain circumstances, things might get in the way. They can go out. There are these little panels up here that you kind of want to move up and out of the way so that they don't clash into things, but you can go out about that far. Unfortunately, you can't really go out any further. It is a bit limited, but that's owing to the original Unique Toys design, which is itself probably limited because of how this guy's built in the movie. You get kind of a bicep swivel. It's weird. So he's got a double jointed elbow. There's a joint right here. Zoom in a bit. There's a joint right here and a joint right here. So you can bend the elbow up here, and you can also bend the elbow here. And there's a bicep swivel between those two joints. So he kind of gets a bicep swivel, but depending on which joint you're using, it's almost more of a like forearm swivel. It's very strange. It takes some getting used to, and I'm still not entirely used to it, but it's fine, I guess. Like, this guy is not going to get super dynamic, but I think that's kind of a given. Hand articulation is a little different, because each hand is different. This hand gets a little bit of wiggle, but for some reason, there's this telescoping joint, which I don't understand. Like, you could just pull it out like that, and that gives you much more rotation. And I think the idea is for it to make it so that you can be more dynamic with the wrist, but it's just weird that it has to slide out to do that. Also, you get that kind of up and down motion. The fingers are involved, so the thumb can swing up and down like this, can rotate like this, but then there's also this panel here that can rotate independently. So you can kind of bring the base of the thumb in like that as well. On top of which, you've got two different knuckle joints, one here and one here. And then we'll do this. For the fingers, the two on the ends can spread out. The one in the middle, the one in the middle can't rotate out. But the other two can spread out. And then you also get a similar two knuckle thing on each of the other three fingers. We already talked about it a bit, but I'm less a fan of this one. This claw is on a ball joint, so it does rotate, and there's a joint in there, so it can go up and down and kind of side to side because of the ball joint. And then the fingers are weird. So the big spindly one only has a single joint. The two other sort of semi-symmetrical ones on the sides of that have a joint here, and then another joint right at the tip. And both of these have basically the same articulation. And then down here you've got two fingers that are basically jointed together, moving up here, and then Independently, they've got 2 joints. Whoop, that's okay, it didn't break, it just popped off. Independently, they've got 2 joints that can bend here, and then also like little claw tips. And that's, that sure is a thing. Now for the middle section of the body, or midsection if you will, you do get waist rotation, and you also get an ab crunch. It only is like a couple of clicks, but it is ab crunch and waist swivel, so you get all that. The hips, okay, so I'm gonna fold this a little bit out. The hips kind of stink in terms of range. They can go out a couple of clicks, and that's basically as far out as it goes. They can go forward basically that far, which isn't very, and back, well, not very far, because you've got these bits up in here kind of prevent backwards motion unless you bring the hip way out. So that kind of stinks. You get thigh rotation, which it's limited, but it's fine for what it is. The knees, well, you get single jointed knees that can bend. These little flaps that are designed to get out of the way. They can bend pretty far. Unfortunately, it doesn't really mean much because you can't really get the hips forward that far, but you got the knees. And then there's this problem, which, yeah, I think this is where I intended to talk about it a bit. Because this is a knockoff, these little metal pieces right in here are supposed to clip into the side of the leg here and hold this assembly together. They do, but it's very easy to undo those just by see, it just rotated it and it just popped out. So when I move this guy around, even this leg, which I haven't touched, it's coming loose. So when I'm moving this guy around, I basically want to grab right down here and hold those pieces with my thumbs to make sure that they don't come out. Like, he's not going to fall apart if those aren't pegged in, but it does help with stability, and it just bums me out that those won't stay in. Though it makes transforming into truck mode a little bit less annoying because they come out pretty easily. And then for the feet, you get heel rotation and toe rotation, and the toe rotation is annoying because parts like to catch. So when you rotate out like this, it doesn't want to go back. And there's just this thing that it's catching on in here. You just kind of have to push it past that. And it's a soft piece, but it just sucks. But yeah, you've got that. And then you can technically go up and down at the toe, but like there's no real reason to. You're not going to get dynamic with this guy. This is not a dynamic figure, which is fine. It's not like, you know, I knew what I was getting into because I had the Unique Toys version before, but it would have been nice if he had a little bit more of a range. But this is also a super complicated design, so I get it. Now, Unique Toys Desperado is already a pretty large boy, but if you remember back to the beginning of this video, I said this is an oversized knockoff, so yeah, he's quite big. And I mean big. He looks gigantic next to modern Deluxes and Voyagers. This might actually be the tallest Megatron I own. He's even on par with some combiners. And I'm talking larger modern combiners too, like Legacy Menasor with upgrades that increase his height. He's even close to some third-party options. This, my friends, is a very tall toy. Okay, I have stripped Megatron down and it is time for the transformation. This is going to be fun just because this is so big and a little cumbersome. But before we get into that, got a shill for the coffee and the Patreon. Links to both at the end of the video as well as down in the description. Otherwise, typical YouTube stuff of like, comment, share, subscribe also helps. Now, to start, it is very important from what I've picked up that you want to do the legs first when you're going into vehicle mode, and then when you're going into robot mode, you want to do the upper body first. This is probably going to be a little messy. I'm going to do the best I can. So I'm going to start one leg at a time. Just going to bring the legs out a bit. I want to unbuckle these bits here if they didn't already undo themselves. And this piece, this flap back here, pops open because this is what's holding it in place. So pull that back a little bit. Now you can kind of pull out. So this thing loves to come out most of the time. There we go. Okay. So, oh yeah. And you want to get those out of the way. Don't want to forget that. So this can come out, and this will flip forward, and this just kind of will sit for now. And we'll do one leg at a time, because that'll just be easier. So with that done, now this can kind of straighten out. This joint up here was originally stuck because of this piece. So with this moved, you can now rotate this down and straighten out the knee to kind of get the leg a little bit out of the way. This piece now swings out and up, just again to get out of the way. Rotate the thigh 90 degrees because you want this joint pointed in. And with that pointed in, we can now bring this back in. And this can go up so that it's not, nope, it's not going to stay. Okay, whatever. Now we can rotate this joint. I'm going to rotate it this way, I believe. And now things get complicated. To reiterate, this is not a difficult transformation. It's just difficult to do with something this large behind a camera. I'm gonna take this piece, flip that up and around. There's actually a lot to do with the feet, so I'm really hoping I can get the order of operations correct here. Fold this flap out, and it's spring-loaded, but this folds out. No, actually, we'll keep this down for now. And there is a thing here that disconnects, if I can remember what that is. The wheels, yeah. The wheels unplug from down here, and this all swings up and out. This piece flips back, and that should allow all of this to more effectively swing out. There we go. So this all swings up and out. This can swing out as well. The wheels will swing in and tab in right here. Okay, this comes around and swings up and tabs in here to complete the wheel well. And this will just stay for now. This piece rotates around and actually rotates the other way. But what you want to do is you want to push this piece in. And by pushing that in, you can get this started and then just pull this out a little bit more. Then this swings around and will kind of slide into place. It's tricky to manage, but this rotates around and slides over to complete the smokestack. This untabs, this untabs, this flips up. Then it can rotate. Because we've got to get these pieces out of the way. So this would be so much easier if it wasn't so big and heavy. Okay. So there's this little flap under here. This comes down, and it is on a spring. So this will come out and kind of line up on its own. With that done, now this can swing around. This flap folds all the way up and in to the inside. This piece down here untabs, folds out, this folds out, and this folds in and plugs in to the side here and goes nice and flush. Going around to this side now, the wheel kind of rotates up, and this whole thing is going to... okay, we're going to poke that out. And this needs to rotate to get out of the way. This will rotate around, and as this rotates around, this wheel flips 180. Then this can go around the rest of the way. From there, this can swing in, and you also want to get this flap out of the way just so that it doesn't crash into stuff. So that swings in. This comes down. I need to glue this in. It's fine. This comes down, comes in the rest of the way, and it will peg in kind of to the side here. So there, we've got that going. This, just gonna peg that back on. It's fine. It didn't break. It just does that. Now this will rotate back around. The toe flips down and will peg in here. That locks that into place, and then this toe swings around and goes there. So from here, going to open up the door. Angle this back down, okay. I'm going to open up the door, swing this up, and then swing this back in. And also, while I'm thinking about it, these side mirrors, which are separate in the box, but they can go in, they just swing up like that. And as you can see, you can keep them in place for the robot mode. This flap rotates 180 degrees and just kind of sits back like that. And now this piece will swing in and it will tab into place. This is going to be tricky to show. There's a spot where if you can angle this just right, this tab right in here will tab in to a slot on the silver piece here. And it is tricky as heck to line up when you can't see anything. There we go. Okay, had to angle this right. And this piece tabs in here, and this can come down and it'll peg in right up here to keep the roof of the cab down. There we go. And that is most of one leg. Also, another thing to mention, you want to unpeg this thing and bring it down. You want to get it past these flaps here, because this needs to be in this position later. So definitely want to take care of that before getting too far into it. My mistake. Okay, now that we've got both legs done, comes the tricky part. You want to pinch this together, and this needs to all go together, but then this piece comes down, and there are pegs that will go into these little tab slots right down here, and it's very, very tricky, let's say, to do all that. So we're going to peg the front together all along here. Actually, while we're doing this, let's just grab the shotgun, because there are, let's see, there we go. There's little slots down here that this should slide into, and the end goes underneath these bits up here. So this kind of slides in here, and this can all peg together, and that will keep the shotgun in place. So weapon storage, yay! Okay. Now, going to try to get this done, and as I said, this is tricky, but you want to squeeze it as best you can, and then get these bits down and tabbed into place. And this is such a tricky part of the transformation. There we go, had to use some behind the camera force, but we got it. Now we can work on the upper body. This is, as I said, this is really not that bad. It's just having to do it behind a camera. And this thing is big. Just gonna extend the head out for now. These bits can come up. And going to keep the arms kind of out. This will fold up, and these can come back around, and these essentially what they do is they kind of fold in over each other like that. So that gets those out of the way. Everything kind of separates. There we go. This came unpegged. This can come up and down here. Essentially what happens is there's a bunch of stuff in here that separates from the chest. There we go. And now this can all accordion out and slides back. And now what we want to do is rotate these flaps around and bring them in, and then rotate them back. So little haunch pieces flip in like that. They don't like peg into anything, they just kind of sit. Bring this down make sure that ab crunch is in place. And this flap here will swing around and tab in up here. There we go. Okay, that shifts this back a bit, so now we can fold these in and these come down, and it's not quite as cramped down there. These pieces fold down, and there are little tabs here that these panels tab into, which they don't want to tab into, of course. These flaps can move so that these can fold in, and those kind of peg together. And these flaps are supposed to just kind of sit along the back like that. So for the arms, I'm just going to collapse all that in. I'm going to take these flaps here, bring them out, and there's this little tab right here that when you angle this around, will just peg into the side of the arm right there. Then there's this metal piece that untabs from here, and that will allow this to all open up. I missed the other thing. So this silver piece here actually unplugs. This was something on the original, the Unique Toys version, that was kind of annoying for people, where this piece liked to come undone all the time, but here it stays plugged in, which is good. But anyway, that allows this to come in. Okay, now we've got the room. So this folds in, this swings around. This untabs and comes up, because you want to make sure to do that, because I always forget to do that. And this will kind of rotate out, and it sort of tabs in. There's this tab here that plugs into a little spot there, and that all kind of sits. For the forearm, there's just a lot of, I can't remember how this goes now. There's a lot of bits that come off. Like this folds out, this untabs, this untabs here. There's this little catch here that you want to untab from here, which allows you to bring this up. That comes up, this folds out, and this folds out. Come on, I know this folds out. There we go. Okay, so this untabs and swings out. That now allows this to rotate around and come out, and this also opens up, and this also swings up. I'm sorry this is not in frame very well. This is just very, very tricky and difficult behind a camera, as I've said many times. This hand can kind of fold in. This folds up. This folds in and will kind of slot over this. And this will become the side of the tanker. This rotates up as well. There we go. And now you can use that double joint elbow thing to slide this down into position here. And this should slide back. There we go. We're going to need this piece later. So this will just, for now, sit like this. This arm is much the same story with the untabbing and whatnot, and this piece that you want to move so that this all can shift around. But the forearm is a bit different, so I'm going to skip forward to that. Okay, for the claw hand, I believe the idea is to straighten out the fingers and pull back on the claw. Like, I've never figured this one out, because it's just so strange and particular, and getting all this around the robot mode head is just kind of a pain. But do that. There's this little gray piece that untabs, and this will untab from, this untabs from here. This should untab from here. There's this little bit here that you untab, and that unfolds. This all unfolds and swings up, and this straightens out. And does this go back down? I don't remember. But this will now swing up, this swings up, and this will again shift down to line up more with what's going on here. And this, I believe, just swings down like that. Now to get all this taken care of. Okay, I did one side to make it to remind myself how this works. So this has been such a mess. So the way this goes is this, we're not going to deal with yet. This piece comes around. This flap folds in. This comes in like this. And then you want to bring this in like this first. Then this slides in here. And then once that's all in place, this will peg in right down here. And that locks all that together. Now this piece can attach to here, and it uses tabs that are on this panel that we just put in place. So this all slides in and pegs into place and is very difficult to do at arm's length behind a camera, but we've made it this far. This will slide in and should peg in there. This should peg in here, and this should peg in here. Come on, peg in. There we go. And that slides in there. That pegs in there, and then this piece back here, I'm going to rotate this around, and then this swings in and will peg into the rear wheel well. And that should be it. It is a lot getting this situated. And there is Megatron, or Desperado, whatever, this thing, in truck mode. I feel like I need to state, or restate, since I don't script the transformation bits and have no idea if I already said it, that the transformation on this figure actually doesn't bother me. When I'm in the right mindset, I could even say I enjoy it. However, it is involved and it can be awkward to do, especially from behind a camera. I can't help but respect it though. There's a kind of flow to it that, as long as you remember to tackle things one half at a time, so start with the legs going into truck mode, or start with the upper body going into robot mode, it's really not bad. I know it looked terrible on camera, but that's a combination of, it's been a while since I transformed it, it's big, I'm doing it behind a camera, and I'm trying to speed through it. And the truck mode is not perfect. I think we can all agree on that. But considering what the robot mode looks like, I'm fine with this. There aren't even that many compromises. The cab is totally fine and looks appropriately spiky. They kept the tallies on the doors, which can open, and it has a couple of sets of side mirrors. As I mentioned before, the ones that are plugged into the front by the wheel wells, those are packaged separately, but as you saw during transformation, you can leave them on in and between both modes. Most of the trailer on the back is also totally fine. It's just the clump of parts around where the cab and trailer connect, and at the very back end, where things visually fall apart a little bit. But again, with such a bonkers robot design, it's a miracle how clean so much of this still looks. And it does all this without being as complex as the Alien Attack or even New Age versions. At least from what I've seen in videos. There's no way I'm going to get the Alien Attack one, and the New Age one, I'm kinda, after watching the transformation videos, like, nah, I think I'll stick with this. Plus, you can just cover up a lot of these imperfections with the cloak and chain. It can be a little fiddly to set up, but once you get things situated, it all holds well enough, and it basically makes most of the imperfections disappear. You just kind of need to fold things around in a way that is at least semi-convincing. Just drape it over the top, then get the chain involved. And again, not perfect, but it works. As for the shotgun, as we saw during transformation, it can store in the underside. You just want to make sure to do that as you're going into truck mode, because otherwise it can be a little bit fiddly to try and plug it in after the fact. But either way, once it's in there, you won't see it unless you like looking at the underside for some reason. Seeing as the robot mode was massive, this shouldn't be much of a surprise. In vehicle mode, this thing is still huge. Several times bigger than a Deluxe or a Voyager, but also significantly bigger than a Leader. Though in this mode, the mass is more squished in and stretched back, so it's not quite as bulky looking, emphasis on looking, as the robot. Still absolutely gigantic, though. A part of me thinks back on when I used to have the desert version of Desperado and wishes I'd just kept that figure instead of selling it off and eventually getting a hold of this. Because the deco is better, and it's a little smaller, so it's not quite so much of a pain to fit on the shelf. But another louder part of me is happy with the KO. Particularly in the context of choosing between buying this or paying twice as much for the original. There are trade-offs for that price difference, to be sure. The deco isn't as nice, which I can customize at my leisure, so whatever. It's bigger, so it takes up more shelf space, I can deal. And a few of the tabs, particularly around the thighs, can be irritating to work with. Even so, the price combined with the improved head option and vastly improved chain are enough to make me happy. I miss Desperado, and now I have Desperado again. Kind of. That's pretty much all there is to it. I feel like if money isn't a concern, you should absolutely grab the Unique Toys figure if you can, but if you're on a tighter budget or really want a larger version of that figure, I'd say go for it and get the KO. It's good. Not perfect or spectacular, but good. Anyway, that's enough about what I think. What do you all think of this oversized knockoff, or the original Unique Toys release? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll be back to say more words about toys at you next time.